Hey everyone, Jeff here, and I've been keeping a secret. Yes, I grew up being a shredder, and it is something that I still love to do. I know it's not something you know me as, more of like a blues rock guy, and of course I do love all that stuff, but my main roots growing up was guys like Uli John Roth, Michael Schenker, Jakey Lee, Randy Rhoads, and the king of shred, Yngwie Malmsteen. Now, of course, you're going to say, Jeff, what about Eddie Van Halen? Of course, I loved Eddie Van Halen, but I wasn't really into Eddie as much when I was a kid. I was more into the darker European sounding stuff. Like I said, like the early Scorpion stuff, Michael Schenker, UFO, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, that kind of stuff. I was very fortunate to have had the formative years of my guitar playing in the heyday of electric guitar. I mean, Eric Johnson had a top 40 hit with Cliffs of Dover, and Joe Satriani could be heard on the radio on a pretty regular basis, which is absolutely unheard of today. Now, of course, between social media and Instagram and all these things, shredding and guitar technique have made leaps and bounds because all these things are readily available. It's had a real resurgence on the internet, which is a ton of fun. But for me, the main thing about a lot of these guys was they were just cool. They were rock stars. If you think about someone like Ritchie Blackmore or one of my favorite guitar players, Jakey Lee, just the coolest guy on stage. What a presence. He started playing and you're like, that guy is a badass. So a fun background, the now defunct National Guitar Workshop. I was the youngest guitar teacher to teach there at age 21, and I taught metal classes for 6 weeks straight, pretty much 6 days a week. It was pretty insane, just talking about shredding and all that. And it was great at the time because that was all happening. And then finally, I got them to hire my friend Terry Sarek, who's an amazing guitar player, much more qualified for the position than me, and I passed that mantle along to him. In the late 80s, when I had hair, I was in a hair metal band. So I played a lot in the tri-state area with a band called Restless. And I joined a band called Hades, which was a metal band. That was pretty short-lived. But during that period of time, with Restless, it was a hair metal band. We played with bands like Trickster and other bands. And then with Hades, which was a much heavier band that I was in for a few weeks before I got kicked out for smiling too much on stage, we opened for King Diamond, Megadeth, Anthrax, Overkill. It was a really fun time. So that kind of fell apart. Supposed to be a tour with this band. It didn't work out. And then I didn't have a band. So I decided to go to music school, which was the best move I ever did. So being around all those great guitar players up at Berklee at the time, everybody was working on shredding. It was all about that. And it was a really fun, exciting experience. And of course, at that time, I got exposed to a lot of things that I was kind of listening to in high school, like Alan Holdsworth and Jeff Beck, and some classical music as a result of someone like Yngwie Malmsteen. So then at college, I was exposed to guys like Mike Stern and John Schofield and Robin Ford, and I started to become the player that I am more today. But the beautiful thing about having the shred background is I just love that kind of playing still. I still love Yngwie Malmsteen. Is the aggression and the technique that it taught me. It made me become somewhat of a virtuoso, if I do say so myself. Of course, there's different levels of virtuosity, of course. Rock and roll guitar became, or metal guitar became like all the other instruments. If you play classical violin, you are expected to have great technique. If you're a jazz piano player, or jazz anything, or classical anything, you're expected to have really, really good technique. It's just a part of playing the instrument. Guitar is only one of those instruments like, yeah, that technique stuff. In any other genre of music, technique is required. It's expected of you. How you use it is up to you, because with great power comes great responsibility. All right, so after I got out of college, I joined a band called Liquid Hips. It was a ton of fun. We had a bunch of independent record releases. We toured Europe quite a bit. It was a great experience for me because it was during that kind of funk metal period. We were there before everybody, I have to say. The guys in the band were a little bit older than me, and they were New York City downtown funk jazz avant players. And they brought me in as the heavy guy. And we did a lot of records, put out 3 records. I learned so much from those guys, and it was my first tour. Actually, the bass player in the band for a little while was J.D. DeServio, who is now in Black Label Society, which is a guy I knew from college. So that's kind of fun crossover into my metal world. I can't forget my good friend Pavel Masiwoda, who is now the bass player of the Scorpions. We played together for many years, and here I am with my old pal Pavel. It was a great experience. We opened up for bands like P-Funk, and one night we shared the stage with Public Enemy and Ice-T. We literally shared the stage. We played with them, and then they invited us up on stage. So I was jamming on stage with Flavor Flav, Chuck D, and Ice-T while they were freestyling, and I was playing some metal guitar. So that's some pretty cool street cred, I guess. And we all know what happened, the fateful day of hearing Smells Like Teen Spirit, and everything was different. And that's cool for a large extent because I love Nirvana and bands like Soundgarden and Pearl Jam's early stuff. They were great bands, and they are great bands. Hair metal and the shred stuff, I think had run its course. There was just too much of it and overkill, and it was definitely style over substance. All you have to do is turn on like Metal Mayhem now on MTV, and there's some really cool stuff on there, and there's some really, really terrible bands, and just pretty much unlistenable. But I do have to say it was a really fun time to be out as a young guitar player. If you guys are enjoying this video, please hit the like and subscribe. Also, I have a number of courses that will help you learn things like your arpeggios or connecting your pentatonic scales. Courses that are designed to help you push your understanding of the guitar and your technique to the next level. You can check those out over at JM Guitar Lessons using the link above or below. You'll get a special discount on my latest course called Mastering Pentatonic Connections. Also, you'll also get discounts on all my other courses using the link below. So what's my point? Well, I've always been attracted to more aggressive guitar players. Now, of course, if you're chops all the time, that's terrible. But I love the guitar player when you know they have all this stuff in reserve and they can really kick into high gear. That, to me, is the best. That's like the great jazz musicians and classical musicians. They can play beautifully lyrically, play a blues, but when it's time to kick butt, they can totally go into that fifth gear and tear your head off. Like I said, chops for the sake of chops is terrible and boring. It gets to be very boring. Music is about the contrast. You can play something slow, answering with something fast. It makes a huge difference. If you don't have really good technique, I feel like you're limited in what it is that you can play and what you hear. The interesting thing is the more you learn on the instrument and the more technique you develop, the more it becomes a part of your playing and becomes the way you hear music. And that's really cool. I have a really difficult time with very sleepy guitar players. You know, the ones or those players where every note is sacred and every time they play a note they're shaking a neck and letting the chord ring or anything like that. There's a place for that, but I do need it to go to the next level. Music is life. Life, if lived well, is sloppy. It's beautiful. It's messy. It's horrible. It's brutal. It's fantastic. It's happy. It's sad. It's melancholy. It's everything. My favorite musicians are the ones who can channel this through their playing, whether it's a great singer, violinist, piano player, any musician. This is the goal. What I loved about having this metal background is it provided me with the technique and be able to play aggressively, to be able to kind of grab someone by the collar really when you need to and then put them gently back down in their chair and then tell them everything is going to be okay. That, to me, is the most exciting stuff to see. So learning how to shred made me the guitar player that I am today and opened the doors and horizons to me to listen to other kinds of music. Yngwie brought me to classical music. Mike Stern brought me deeper into jazz. Robben Ford and John Scofield brought me more into jazz. Alan Halsworth expanded my idea of what could be done on the guitar. So it's all part of the lineage. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to see some more of the hard rock side of me, please let me know in the comments below. I'm having a great time doing this. It's really fun revisiting this, and I'm really enjoying myself, so I hope you guys enjoy it as well.